Good to go.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our June 7th, 2021 Caucus of the Albany Common Council prior to our full council meeting. For the record, we have council members O'Brien, Hoey, Council President Ellis, Councilman Johnson, Councilwoman Frederick, Councilman Conti, and Councilman Robinson, along with our clerk, Danielle Gillespie, Research Council, John Raphael Pichardo, and Corp Counsel, Brett Williams. Also joined by Councilmember Fahey, and I'm not sure if Mr. Balleron was here before, but we're all here. Just jumping into the agenda for approval of minutes for Mr. O'Shea is also joining us. Approval of minutes from a previous meeting. I'll have both the May 3rd and May 17th meeting minutes for passage, for looking for approval on those. Anyone else? Okay, then next on to local laws. We'll have local law L of 2021 by council members Johnson, Anani, and Hoey with the support of Council President Ellis. That'll be a referral to public safety. That's local law L of 2021. Okay, next on the agenda, local law M by myself. It's a change to basically local law C with some amendments. It's not a change, it's a new law, and I'm offering it. It's local law M. It'll be referred to public safety to be further discussed. Okay, next, under local laws held, we'll be taking up local law C by Ms. O'Shea. We had, it was placed, it was tabled at our previous meeting. We'll be moving forward with that. We cleared, and discussed the process. We'll have a motion from Mr. Balleron to remove it from the table, and Mr. Conti will be a second, and we'll move forward with that and be voting. Ms. O'Shea.
I know that this is up to a majority of the council, but and I just want to make sure that we do not have Ms. Farrell in attendance tonight.
That's correct, nor Ms. Love.
Nor Ms. Love.
Yeah, it's a recent development.
All right. I would really appreciate us not taking this up, taking it off the table tonight, because as we all know that for anything to pass, it requires 8 votes. And when you're dealing with only 13 members, it gets more challenging to get the 8 votes. I do think that this is a matter that should be taken up by the full council, and everybody have an opportunity to vote on it. So if a motion is made to remove it from the table, I will be voting in opposition. I would prefer for us to take it up in 2 weeks.
Okay, we're going. I mean, you are the sponsor, but we've been going back and forth. We're trying to move forward with this. We've delayed it. I have no problem with your request. This is your request as the sponsor. So I mean, it took a bit for us to get to this point, but it's And that's assuming that the outcome would be different in 2 weeks also. But I'm not gonna, we'll see what the members say.
I don't know if the outcome will be different. What I do know is that holding it will give it the maximum chance for passage. And I, as the sponsor, am interested in the maximum chance for passage of this legislation.
Okay, Mr. Ballerin.
First and foremost, I apologize. My sectionals, they moved it from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. I had a little. I was going to.
Mr. Ballerin, you're breaking up.
Can't hear you at all.
He's
really
having
bad.
technical difficulties and he's frozen.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yes.
Okay. I respect Councilman's decision to hold it, and I hope we can honor that.
Okay.
Also,
Okay.
JR, I'm trying to sign on a different phone that may have a little bit of a better service, if that's possible as well. Thank you.
Okay, and
Mr. Ballerin, I'm sorry, were you the Rosario's iPhone that's coming up?
Stuff later. You see my.
okay. He said he supports and thinks we should respect the requested table. I'm whatever you want to do, Mr. O'Shea, I'll support. Anybody else want to weigh in? Otherwise, we'll hold it for 2 weeks.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, so local law C will not be acted on at this point. So next, we're at local law K. Where did it go? By Mr. Flynn, that went to committee, came out with positive recommendation. Is Mr. Flynn here? We'll be voting on local law K also. I don't see him though. That's number 9 on the held, the local laws held. Okay. Next on to ordinances introduced. First up, we'll have 176121 by Ms. Fahey regarding solid waste. That's going to be a referral to the law committee. 176121. Next ordinance 186121 by Council Member Doche in relation to the USDO. We said we weren't gonna. You want to speak to this, Ms. Doche? You wanted to
Sure.
hold it in. Yeah.
So this actually came out of discussion in the planning committee, where we are looking at revisions to the USDO, and we have currently suspended the green roof building incentive for the past 2 years. It's about to expire imminently. So it's important that we go ahead and renew that suspension while our full reconsideration of the USDO is pending. And so hopefully this will be dealt with more substantively in that review. But in the meantime, we want to continue that suspension.
Thank you. So it'll be an intro and hold.
And we are, if I can just add, we are scheduling a public hearing for the meeting of,
21st.
right, June 21st, which is a prerequisite for us passing it, and hopefully we will pass it that night. And that way there will be continuity in the suspension of this incentive.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. Mr. Igo, it sounded like you were trying to get in there. You're muted.
I think you're still muted. I'm gonna try.
There you go, Joe.
Yeah. My laptop's not working. I'm trying to reboot it and I've never used it on the phone. I can't find a, I don't know, mute button. I'm all set. I'm just listening now.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Just real quick, Ellie, it's the ordinance 18 has been referred officially today to the Albany County Planning Board. It'll be taken up at their June 17th meeting. So once it's taken up on June 17th, we'll be free to go on June 21st. And also in review of SECRA, it's a type 2 matter, so it doesn't need any further environmental analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Pichardo. Okay, so next under ordinances introduced is 1961-21 by me regarding an easement for a deck in the right of way for druthers down on off of Broadway. There'll be a referral to finance. We are now at resolutions introduced. We have resolution 5061-21 by Councilmember Robinson regarding Juneteenth. We, in the past, we were all co-sponsors on that. Are all members co-sponsors? Yes. Show of hands. Yes. Okay. That'll be a pass. Next, resolution 5161-21 by Mr. Conti for Pride Month. That'll be a pass. We're all also listed as co-sponsors on that. Yes, everyone's got these puzzled look on their face. All right. And then next to the two items we're adding by majority consent. Resolution 52-6121R and 53-6121R. 52 is the gun violence awareness, which we're all co-sponsors on. And 53 is celebrating Washington Park's 150th anniversary, which we all agreed to co-sponsor also. They'll be passed.
So that's Conti and you.
For
52 is you?
no,
Anani.
it's a nani.
I can't.
It's yeah,
And 53 is Conti.
yes. It's a nani because his name is first.
Okay.
No, but no, he's passionate about it like we all are. So that's it for the agenda. What are we looking, how are we looking for time? Just updates. We're working on the legislative aid position. We're scheduling the interviews for the end of next, the 10th and the 11th, so we can get through some of the interested candidates. So we're working on that. Also, I've been having discussions with Ms. Gillespie regarding trying to get back into the chambers. It's been put back together, cleaned up. Our big issue now is just trying to maintain contact and maybe trying to figure a way to stream to keep folks engaged. And we actually have a meeting with the vendor on the 17th to discuss getting him getting in there and putting that together for us, so we can maintain our online presence and engagement with folks. So that's stuff we're working on. Anybody got anything? Mr. O'Brien?
Yeah, so should we go back to the chamber before we have a functional audio and on live streaming? Because right now, we'll probably get the best audio by Zoom and online streaming capability. I will go to the briefing, but I guess I'd like to know that we can at least have as audibly and visually accessible a meeting from the chamber as we presently have by doing it by Zoom. That would be my feeling, plus, concerns about safety.
Correct. Yeah, so we're trying to work through that. Again, I don't want to lose the connection to the residents that we have. Our equipment in the chambers is old, and
Yes.
we needed to upgrade. Pre-COVID, we were dealing with these issues, so we're working through those issues. We can decide as a group, how we move on this. But Ms. Gillespie first, and then Mr. O'Shea had her hand up.
So as we were going into COVID, I had worked with the IT department and got a signal converter. There may be a way for us to continue to live stream. I believe the Honorable Kimbrough will come in on Friday, and we're going to do a test of the system. And if other members want to come in, just so we can kind of get a feel for capturing the audio and streaming at the same time to see if it's a viable option. I did talk to the vendor again today to try and get a ETC, estimated time to complete for the project. If the city were to award it to him, how long what was his timeline? A couple other things that, were kind of sort of discussed. So, hopefully after the 17th, we'll have a better update with how long it'll take him to complete if in fact he were awarded the project.
Right, and it's probably not going to happen overnight. Obviously, we also have to work out the logistics around security, because the OCA folks are only there until like 4:30, maybe 5 o'clock, and our meetings are generally after that. So we have to make sure we're secure. Mr. O'Shea?
Yeah, so that was one question that occurred to me about the security issues now. And it's really security for the whole building, not only for, we're sort of accepting responsibility for that. So I was wondering if I missed a target date. That's the first question for returning.
Nope, I didn't put one out there. This is the start of the conversation. We got some things we need to work through. Yeah.
And does anybody have any information about the governor's executive order with regard to our being able to meet remotely via Zoom and those conditions? I don't know if there was or is an expiration date. I think that it was left at until he decides that the crisis is over or issues another executive order. Do we have any insight and information into?
Since when the legislator reconciled the executive orders, they let in place to maintain it, and that he needed to seek permission from the legislator if he was going to amend it. Last I saw, they're still in effect. The only thing is now there's a question of what is going to be amended, as the governor has now stated that once we reach a 70% vaccination rate in the state, which we're shy of like 1.4%, that restrictions in terms of capacity majority of them will be lifted. What the majority of those mean, we're not sure yet.
Yeah, it's very unclear.
So some of us,
which is
Some
unclear.
of us are still, I'm sorry, but I'm older. And I'm fully vaccinated. But wading into this process of being places, I still wear a mask, in stores and stuff. And so I'm wondering, not only for people like me, but other people who would want to come and potentially attend our meetings in person about rules and that kind of thing. So I assume you don't have the answers to that. I'm just saying that overall, whether we, get into the mask debate for anybody attending our meetings, at least, initially, proof of vaccination and all those kinds of issues. We want to be safe, and we want the public to be safe.
Well, the executive order he issued today is very unclear. It just says, first it continues the suspensions, that modification of the law unless superseded, modified, otherwise expired by July 5th, 2021. Second, extends directives unless suspended, modified, or otherwise expired, made by Executive Order 2020, and each successor order for 30 days through July 5th, 2021.
Yeah, so Ms. Gillespie, you were trying to get in there?
I'm not really sure if you could mandate people that are coming into to ask people to show proof of vaccination. We could probably post some guidelines. I know there's something going around specific to employees. There's a working document, and it encourages people who are unvaccinated to wear masks. But there's really no way for us to know, and we can't ask for that or prohibit entry based on someone's vaccination status was what my understanding was. So, and I feel like the guiding document says that if you are a vaccinated employee, you're not required to wear a mask as long as you're able to maintain a certain footage distance. But you can if that's your comfort level. So we would probably want to put some signage up for the general public to just reiterate the rules of the building so that they know what my understanding was.
Thank you.
Right, okay. Yeah, and this was just an attempt to kind of let everyone know where we are and what's going on with that, because some members have asked. Anyone else? Mr. Anani?
No, I was just going to follow up a comment with JR said that we're 1.4% away from actually reaching that threshold. And I just want to say I'm optimistic with the treasurer's and the mayor's decision to waive parking tickets fees. I believe that we're going to get there probably by the end of this week. So please, council members, get the word out. I feel like the more people that get vaccinated, the more we can get out there to working hard and also enjoying and supporting some of the local businesses. So I urge my colleagues to get the word out, to encourage people to be vaccinated, also to encourage them about the measure that's in place right now as it relates to getting the parking ticket waived by the treasurer and also by the mayor. So we could all go out there and enjoy our summer, but also be around our loved ones, our families, and support the local businesses. I miss going to juniors and all the other, actually I still go, but I miss supporting the businesses in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Mr. Conti?
I think juniors is still open. On a different topic, I just wanted to update folks on our permit parking home rule bill, which it looks like I think I'm guardedly optimistic. I'm never optimistic until it's already done, but it has passed the Senate, so it's done over there, and it's been moving through committee in the Assembly. And today it moved out of the Ways and Means Committee to the Rules Committee. The next stop after that would be going to the Assembly floor for a final vote. So we're looking good. And I just wanted to highlight, if that does pass and gets signed by the governor, I think we could probably start working on implementation issues after it passes and before the governor acts, just to be ready. But there is going to be a process we have to put in place to determine how we're going to implement that, what areas in terms of expansions, how those additional spots might be allocated. It won't be as extensive as what we did several years back when we first implemented the system, but it's going to involve traffic engineering. It's going to involve the planning department as well. So just to put it on your radar screen, once we get the authorization, there is a process that we have to go through to be able to implement the expansion and identify the areas that we want to address. But we're looking good.
Great, awesome. We got another minute or so before the meeting starts. Mr. Williams.
Might as well take this opportunity on a sort of personal note. I just wanted to let the council know that I will probably be missing a little bit of time within the next few weeks. My wife and I are expecting a new member of the family, so
Congratulations.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So
Congratulations.
just wanted the council to be aware that if I'm missing for a few weeks towards the end of this month, then you'll know why. So
Yeah, I've never had
I'm not
that
sure who-
experience, but I
my
heard there's a
office-
lot of sleepless nights.
yeah.
Look at that glow now.
I know.
I know. Yeah, I'm smiling now. I'm not sure yet who from my office will be covering for me, but we'll get that worked out. So there should be no interruption of service for the council, but just figured I'd throw that out there.
Terrific.
Thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I think we're about. Right, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. That being said, we'd like to welcome everyone to a Common Council meeting on June 7th, 2021. We'd ask the clerk, can she please call the roll?
Absolutely, Mr. President. If all members can unmute themselves so that they're able to respond to their names. Anani,
Present.
Valorant,
Here.
Conti,
Present.
Bilchet,
Present.
Fahey,
Here.
Farrell, Flynn,
Here.
Frederick,
Present.
Hoey,
Here and present.
Igo,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Kimbrough,
Here.
O'Brien,
Here.
Robinson.
Here. That would be old now. Fine. Name.
13 present and 2 members absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now, would people please, could you put up the flag so we can do our pledge of allegiance? And then after our pledge of allegiance, we will have a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now we'll move on to our public comment period of tonight's meeting. Normally we have anyone signed up to speak. When you called upon, you state your name, first and last name, and address for the record. You have 5 minutes to speak upon any topic you choose to speak upon tonight. Common council members cannot answer your questions at that time. So please address all questions to myself as Mr. President or Chair, whichever one you choose. If council members choose to answer or respond to your questions, they will do so at a later time in the meeting. When you hit the 4-minute mark, I will give you a 1-minute warning that you have 1 minute remaining to close your comments. With that being said, can the clerk please call the first speaker?
Anita Fair,
Good evening.
My intention was to speak in favor of local law C. But I do appreciate the fact that council's not going to take it up until 2 weeks, because I think it's a very important issue that every council member should go on the record for. So I will save my remarks for 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Thayer. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Marco Flag.
Hello. I have to give like where I stay and all that.
Yes.
Okay, sure. I stay at 500 Park Avenue here in Albany. And just want to, I also would have liked to comment on the tear gas ban, but I'll reserve that till it's brought up for vote. There's quite a lot to be done in Albany, I believe. I think the Times Union's article on the redlining has shown that. A lot of these disparity and inequalities in Albany, a place that I grew up in, are the result of policies that have been in place for decades and decades and decades. It takes bold, commitment to the community, to the law, to make things equal. And I really hope that y'all can work together and work with the community to make those changes.
Thank you, Mr. Flag. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Alana Klein.
Alana, I see you. You just need to unmute. There she is. Go ahead.
Here we go. Mr. President and members of, first off.
Name and address, thank you.
Alana Klein, and I'm actually at 214 J Street. I'm no longer on Glenwood. Mr. President and members of the council, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. I'd also like to wish a congratulations to Mr. Williams. I would first like to say that while I'm at my wit's end when it comes to gun violence in our city, I in no way can compare my experience to the people and families that have been directly affected by these tragedies. Chief Hawkins was brought in at the end of the summer in 2018. Since then, we have made little to no progress on police accountability and police brutality. From Elazar Williams to First Street, to Grand Street, to South Pearl Street, to our street, to the officer caught on body camera making racist comments. Additionally, the issue of ATVs and dirt bikes has gotten worse despite the chief being authorized to create a bounty via a 2019 resolution. As bad as all of that is, I recently saw a story on the news about the gun violence these past few summers. While I don't have the raw numbers, the summer of 2020 was greater than 200% more violent than 2019. And May of this year saw almost double the number of shootings compared to May 2020 and 6 murders. I'm sorry, I lost my face. Just give me a second. And 6 murders versus 1 a year ago. It seems we're on track to suffer around 250 to 300, possibly higher % more gun violence compared to his first summer in Albany. Whatever the chief's strategy is, it's not only not working, but has us tracking in the opposite direction. The Chief Hawkins experiment is over. Of course, I'm not reckless enough to suggest that we go through the summer with an interim chief when we're already in the thick of it. I'm also not versed on the process of how exactly things would work. However, I would like to see us move in a different direction this fall. Boycott the NRA, Black Lives Matter, Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
David Easton. Talisha Nguyen. Danielle Hilly. Thomas Mueller.
Hello. Good evening. My name is Thomas Muller. I live at 22 Tremont Street in the city of Albany. I was calling to support local law C this evening. And as some of our community members have mentioned, given the vote is being postponed, I will reserve all of my comments until the next city council meeting.
Thank you, sir. So clerk, please call the next speaker.
So those are the only speakers that I had that wanted to share their comments live. I do have some written comments from Gabriela Romero, who is, I'm urging the Common Council again to pass local law C that calls for the ban of tear gas. Tear gas is a military weapon banned in war that has devastating physical and mental health effects on the people it touches. By nature of being a widely diffusive air-rated weapon, its deployment will affect innocent people. In fact, last summer when tear gas was deployed on Albany residents, tons of families, innocent children included, were affected by the deployment of tear gas and feel the lasting effects of its use on their mental health and trust in our leadership. Allowing for tear gas to continue to be used signals to us, the members of the Albany community, that the Common Council is okay with indiscriminate police violence and is unable to take action. The people of this city are closely watching this issue and will not forget how the council handles it. The next,
Madam Clerk, did she give her address on there for the record?
She did not provide her address for the record. Neither did the next comment that was from Aiden Suchak or Sukak, but he does indicate that he's a Ward 2 resident. My name is Aiden. I'm a member of the Youth Political Alliance and want to re-emphasize our support for the original unamended version of local law C as it was written, which would ban the use of tear gas outright. The push by some members of the council to table, delay, and change this law illustrates their desire to uphold the status quo, a status quo that threatens the lives of our communities on a daily basis. Continuing to allow APD to possess these weapons of war only increases friction between the community and the police department. The overwhelming support for the unamended version of this law from the public and community cannot be overstated. Delaying or even passing local law C with amendments is an open expression from members of the council that they do not represent the interest of people. They represent the interest of themselves. And that was from Aiden, resident of Ward 2. And that concludes what I have for comment.
Okay, well, thank you, Madam Clerk. And that will conclude today's public comment period. As we continue on with our agenda, approval of minutes from previous 2 meetings, Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer our meeting minutes from our May 3rd, 2021 and May 17th, 2021 council meetings for passage.
Is there a second on the motion? Thank you, Mr. Hoey. Thank you, Mr. Hoey. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion passes. Moving on to consideration of local laws. Local laws introduced, Mr. Johnson. You're muted, Mr. Johnson. There you go.
I don't have the agenda in front of me. So I don't have the, I'm sorry.
Local law L.
Yeah, I noticed local law L.
For introduction.
And I call for this introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Can the clerk please read the local law?
A local law amending Chapter 42, Departments and Commissions of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to creating a Public Safety Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a referral to public safety.
Thank you. Continuing on with local laws introduced, Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed local law M and ask for its introduction.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the local law?
A local law amending Article 7B, Albany Police Department Interactions of Part 1, Department of Police of Chapter 42, Departments and Commissions of Part 1, Administrative Legislation of the Albany City Code with regard to the use of chemical weapons and kinetic energy munitions on civilian populations.
Thank you, Mr. Kimbrough.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. They'll be referred to the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you. Continuing on with local laws introduced, Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know it's local law K and ask for a roll call vote thereon.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Can the clerk please read the local law?
A local law amending Article 1, Public Grounds designated as parks, government, and care of the parks and parkways of Chapter 251, Parks and Recreation of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to alienation of certain parkland within Lincoln Park, discontinuance of a right-of-way, and dedication of replacement parkland.
Is there any discussion on this local law? Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. President, all members can unmute themselves.
Yes, for a roll call vote.
Okay, yep.
Go ahead.
Anani,
Yes.
Valorant,
Yes.
Conti,
Yes.
Dochette,
Yes.
Fahey,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Frederick,
Yes.
Hoey,
Yes.
Igo,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kimbrough,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
13 in the affirmative.
Local law passes. Now moving on to standing committee reports. Ms. Fahey.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Planning, Land Use and Economic Development Committee met to discuss proposed USDO amendments last Tuesday, June 1st. They'll be meeting again on June 15th on the amendments. The Planning Committee also met on Thursday, June 3rd, to interview potential members of the Municipal Broadband Commission. We will meet again on this Wednesday, June 9th, to continue interviewing potential appointments to the Municipal Broadband Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien.
Two things. The golf course subcommittee met today and heard from the General Services Commissioner. They had issued an RFP exploring ideas for enhancement of recreational opportunities at the golf course. They got 7 responses, which they did not like because they felt they just concentrated on athletic fields and didn't look at the broader scope potential enhancements at the golf course. So they're going to reissue them. We've asked that they send us a copy before they issue it, so it doesn't have any misunderstandings like perhaps the other one did. And the other point is that in this year's budget, right in the general services goals, it states that they will create a golf course management reorganization plan to be fully implemented in 2021. We have not seen that yet. So we ask that we be issued at least a draft, since its completion is supposed to be this year, at least the plan part of it. And the other thing I wanted to report on is there will be a General Services Committee meeting tomorrow at 5:30 to discuss the initiative that the city is creating for backyard composting, to discuss that, and to also discuss resolution 445121, renaming of a portion of Clinton Avenue, and in honor of Benjamin Garland, and to discuss ordinance 155221 regarding the opening and repair of sidewalks, streets, and other pavements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Igo.
Yes, next Monday, June 14th, the Law and Building Codes Committee will be meeting to discuss local law H and I once again.
Thank you, Mr. Igo. Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. President. On May 19th, we discussed local law K, which we just passed. We also discussed the programs for our youth. If any of our council members get an opportunity, go to the website. Justin Atlas did an excellent job creating programs, which is very accessible to the residents of the city of Albany to work and to sign up for. Also on June 23rd, we're going to discuss resolution 495221R about the Capitol lights. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I don't think I missed anyone. I did.
Yep.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Yeah, Public Safety Committee met on the 27th, was last Thursday of May, to discuss the Albany Citizens Police Academy curriculum, and through that discussion, we agreed on some, well, excuse me, there was an allegation that the curriculum was racist, and so we met to kind of address the complaints of the head of the CPRB, and we discussed some long and short-term steps to take to try to rectify that issue, and the conversation will continue. President frozen?
It appears that way.
Oh, I can hear you.
Mr. Ellis, I believe, is.
And we lost him, so you're gonna have to take over for a bit, and I'll call him real quick.
Yes, yes. Right now, we were at the reports of standing committees. Just continuing for a consideration of ordinances. And that was Mr.
I think it's me.
Ms. Fahey, yes, yes.
I noticed ordinance 176121 and ask for its introduction.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can the clerk please read the ordinance, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No problem, that's me. I was frozen. I just got back.
Absolutely. An ordinance amending Article 5A, notice of violation of Chapter 313, solid waste of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to shortening the compliance period for code violations related to health and safety.
Thank you. Mr. Kimbrough?
We will referral to the Law Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yep. Continuing on with ordinance introduced, Ms. Duche.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice ordinance 18.61.21 for introduction.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the ordinance?
An ordinance amending Chapter 375 of the Code of the City of Albany, Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance in relation to incentives for developers to use energy efficient and low impact designs.
And Mr. Kimbrough?
Thank you. There'll be an intro and hold.
Yes.
We'll be holding.
Continue on ordinance introduced, Mr. Kimbrough.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I noticed ordinance 196121 and ask for its introduction.
Can the clerk please read the ordinance?
An ordinance authorizing and directing the grant to 1053 Brewing LLC of an easement in the city of Albany over a portion of the city right-of-way of Bridge Street for the construction and maintenance of an ADA compliant ramp and deck at Druthers Brewing Company.
Mr. Kimbrough? You're muted, Mr. Kimbrough.
There'll be a referral to the Finance Committee, sir.
Thank you. And Mr. Kimbrough?
That'll be it for the remaining ordinances on the agenda.
Thank you. And continuing on our agenda, resolutions introduced. Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice resolution 50-61.21R and ask for its introduction.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please read the resolution? Do you want to pass this or?
Yeah, intro and passage, right?
Yes. Would you like to pass this tonight, Mr. Robinson?
Yes, for passage.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council of the City of Albany recognizing June 19, 2021 as Juneteenth Independence Day in recognition of June 19, 1865, the date on which the news of the end of slavery reached those enslaved in the southwestern United States.
Thank you. Any discussion on this resolution? Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I wanted to thank my colleagues for considering this important resolution to commemorate the date when news of freedom reached slaves 2.5 years after the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. As I reflect back on my early educational years, I was taught everything about our country's Independence Day. I was taught about the Emancipation Proclamation, but I was never taught about how my ancestors continued to endorse the harsh realities of slavery even when there was a declaration of their freedom. The phrase, "we are not free until we are all free," captures the essence of what Juneteenth means to African Americans across our country. Our freedom is not tied to our individuality, but our freedom is tied to the souls of our fellow Black brothers and sisters across this nation. Freedom comes with knowledge. In order for our country to heal those wounded by transgressions, there must be acknowledgement of the significance of this day. It shouldn't only be acknowledged in our government, but it should be acknowledged in our homes, on our jobs, and also in our classrooms, so future generations can celebrate this day with enthusiasm, pride, and give it the attention it deserves. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll? I'm sorry, I'm freezing out, so.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. I thought this was the one where there was a.
Oh, yes, everybody is co-sponsor. So we will do a voice vote on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution passes. Continuing on, the resolutions introduced, Mr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer resolution 51.61.21R and request its passage.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council recognizing and celebrating June as LGBTQ Pride Month in the City of Albany.
Thank you. Discussion on this resolution, Mr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this has been a challenging couple of years as far as Pride celebrations. Our last actual Capital Pride celebration was in 2019. But this year we're beginning to see some celebrations happening again. I was one in Schenectady over the weekend, and there will be a Pride celebration in Albany, a block party this coming Sunday, whatever date that is, June 13th. Which members are welcome to come to. And this is the last time I will be offering this Pride resolution in the Common Council. And during my 24 years on the council, I want to express my appreciation for the support that different councils over the years have continued to show for the community. when we have the flag raising at City Hall Tuesday on June 1st, I recalled in my remarks my first time here in the council chambers. Well, you know what I mean. My first time at City Hall in any official capacity was on June 18th, 1987. And it was the first public hearing on the what we call the gay rights ordinance back then. Our language always wasn't as inclusive as it is today. And it was the public hearing on the ordinance that Nancy Burton had introduced. And I recalled that was the first time I publicly came out at a public event to speak. There were a number of people who came out that evening. And I was recalling that at the beginning, Alderwoman Burton, who had introduced the ordinance in March of that year, played for members of the council recordings of telephone calls and messages she had received, threatening, violent messages for just introducing the ordinance, a piece of civil rights legislation. And I mentioned that because it kind of equates the atmosphere that we were dealing with back in 1987. And if a member of the council could be threatened or receive threatening calls like that, you can imagine what it would take for members of the community to come out and demand their rights. But I did speak at that hearing that night. There were other members of the community who spoke that night. There were more than a few of us who came out that night. And of course, the rest is history. The ordinance was defeated a couple of times, but it was in December 7th, 1992, that it finally passed under Councilmember Keith St. John's sponsorship. So, and there's a lot of progress that we've made since then, both in the city level, expanding the ordinance to include gender identity and expression. At the same time that we were, I think, ahead of the curve, the state began to catch up, and we've made progress from that level as well. So just to recount, I'm not going to go into a long history, but there was a lot going on, a lot of change I've seen over the years. And I do appreciate the support of members of the council over the years. And I'm sure that will continue after I'm gone, and someone else will pick up the mantle and make sure that these issues continue to be on the front burner, and that we continue to recognize the community and the struggle that still is out there, because even though laws have changed, there's still a lot of work left to do. So again, I appreciate your support. On this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Any further discussions? Seeing none, since all members are co-sponsor, we'll do this by a voice vote. Please unmute yourself. All members, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Continuing on, Mr. Kimbrough. Mr. Kimbrough.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to add by majority consent, resolution 52, 6121 and 53, 6121.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
There's a second. Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Anani.
Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed resolution 506121R and ask for its passage, introduction and passage.
Thank you, Mr. Anani. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council declaring June 4th, 2021 to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day and proclaiming June 2021 as National Gun Violence Prevention Month in the city of Albany.
Thank you. Discussion among this resolution. Mr. Anani? Could be me, but I can't hear him.
I believe we've lost him. He may have been having some connectivity issues. I'll reach
Okay.
out to him momentarily.
Any other council members would like to speak upon this resolution? If not, we can go to a voice vote and he can have his comments in miscellaneous. If we can't. So can the clerk please call the roll?
Voice vote.
All of the members are sponsors on this, co-sponsors again.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? It passes. So Mr. Nani, he can do that in miscellaneous. Mr. Conti, continue on with
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer resolution 53.61.21R and request its passage.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council celebrating Washington Park on the occasion of its 150th anniversary.
Discussion about this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Just briefly, I've always said that parks are the great equalizers because they are a space, a green space that brings people together, that are utilized by everyone regardless of race, color, creed, economic status, sexual orientation, and any difference. When you're in a park, really there are no differences because we all are there to enjoy it for the same reasons. Urban parks especially play a really important role in providing a space for recreation. Sometimes I say, for me, it's just to go in there and clear my mind of the urban density because it's such a quiet green space that's there meant to enjoy. And Washington Park is a park that hosts a number of activities from in terms of the tennis courts, the basketball courts, skateboard park, as well as other activities. And it's a place where people will set up their volleyball in the winter. It can be used for winter sports when we're not dealing with, wires and lights and things like that. But it's really a great place. And I think all of our parks are big parks. Washington Park, I'm excited by what's happening at Lincoln Park. And our preserves like Tivoli are really beautiful areas that we should always celebrate. And this is our 150th anniversary. I really commend you to read the resolution, which was put together with the help of the Washington Park Conservancy. It's full of real interesting information about the history of the park, its development, how it's grown over the years, and how it's grown with the community to have more options and things to do as well. So appreciate your support. I think it's a beautiful park and 150 years, great time to celebrate it. So thank you.
Thank you. Further discussions on this? I didn't get the memo. Are we all co-signers, co-sponsors?
Yeah.
All right.
Even Mr. Flynn.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution passes as my kitty is being a bad kitty, spoiled cat that I have. Sorry. So now that concludes any miscellaneous business. Mr. Kimbrough, Mr. Hoey.
Yeah, just real fast. I have a relative and his girlfriend claimed that the police came over and were very disrespectful. And I was very concerned, with the way things are these days. So I reached out to the chief and Deputy Chief, I'm gonna make sure I can't think of his name now, I'm sorry.
Hogan.
Anyhow,
Brian
Hogan, yes. Brian Hogan, very gracious. And my wife and I sat and watched the video of this, incident. And what I saw was a very professional policeman, very, honorable. And it was just, I was shocked because I had two people telling me something different. And what was interesting, what Deputy Chief Hogan told me is this happens all the time. People sometimes imagine things being said that really weren't said. So publicly, I just want to thank the chief and Deputy Chief Hogan for making me feel a lot better with this incident. And I wanted to say it publicly because I was embarrassed. I'll be honest with you, because you believe people that, especially when they're related to you, and then you find out, this didn't happen. And thank God for the cameras that we have, the body cams. I think it's probably one of the most important improvements in policing that has come about. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoy. Mr. O'Brien.
I find it interesting that on an evening when we celebrated the 150th anniversary of a park, and at the same time also passed a piece of legislation regarding park alienation, I had an interesting experience last week, and it regards Westland Hills Park and a project that was given a site plan approval back in December to utilize the entrance to Westland Hills Park for a commercial purpose. Despite the fact that both I and the neighborhood association president, who happens to be a land use attorney, raised objections during that meeting that it was really a parkland that they were allowing commercial access to. We were overruled by that board that night on the assurances of the developer spokesperson, Dan Hirschberg, who said that the entrance to Westland Hills Park was not parkland. We then employed a ordinance that Tom Hoey had sponsored, which was written by Amy Levine and Dave Gallen, to allow an administrative appeal of that, which for various reasons was never answered. And the appeals were filed both by the council leadership and by the neighborhood association. We went out and researched it, and we come up with indisputable proof that the city had applied for federal and state parkland grants to build that particular entrance to the park. And Mr. Hirschberg was the engineer on all those plans, even though 40 years later, he denied that it was part of the park, and his assertions for the sake of his current developer partner were taken gospel by the Board of Planning. Well, we had a meeting last week with Corp Council and with Dave Gallen, myself and Hyde Clark, the president of the neighborhood association. And we were told by Corp Council that the ordinance which we passed, that Tom Hoey had sponsored, was unenforceable, which is kind of strikes me as odd because the ordinance was written by a Corp Council who's no longer with us. And Dave Gallen was present in all of those meetings. And so was council leadership when it was written. And I think Brett was present too. So that's just, to me, mystifying that we have a clear violation of park alienation without the proper authorization. And we are blithely told as a neighborhood association and apparently as council that our only redress is to file an Article 78. They are not going to bring it back for another site plan review and, spend thousands of dollars to seek justice on this. So it's kind of ironic that it happened, that I'm reporting this to you on the same night that we celebrate a park and that we went through the proper alienation mechanisms for the fact that part of Lincoln Park will not be used during a construction period of a certain project. Just unbelievable. And I don't know, I think I have to use the word bad faith on the part of those who told us that we have to do an Article 78.
Mike, that reminds me of the unenforceable covenants that we've went through.
Thank you. Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to just set the reminder that the first 3 of the planning sessions for the new West Hill Community Center will begin on tomorrow. The session will be held from 6 to 7 p.m. and there will be food. We did a canvas of the neighborhood on today and got great feedback from the residents. And so we're looking forward and we're excited about it.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I'd like to say before we close out, Hey, we're going to mention, oh, go ahead, Mr. Anani. Yes, because you got cut off, so we're going to take this time for you to have your remarks about the resolution that you sponsored. Go ahead, Mr. Anani.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this resolution is something that has been passed over the past couple of years, particularly since I've been on the council, is to bring attention to gun violence awareness for June here in our city. Quite frankly, despite the progress that our city has made in addressing gun violence over the last decade, for far too many people in Albany, gun violence remain an unacceptable fact of life. In certain parts of our city, one does not have to search too hard to find someone who has been affected and impacted by gun violence. For this reason, I believe, and many of us on a Zoom call as elected officials believe that our communities have to work with government officials, work with our businesses to bring attention to the rise in gun violence in our community. And nowadays, we're not even seeing it in our historical communities, but it's spreading all throughout our city. Last week, there was a homicide in the 10th Ward, and today there was a shooting, I believe, that took place in the 8th Ward, bordering the 1st Ward. So quite frankly, this is not being contained in a certain neighborhood in our city. The warm weather season is coming up and has begun, and already in our city, we have 9 homicides. Last month, we had 6 homicides in our city. The people have been told that there is a plan in place to address this, yet we see frequency of these shootings and deaths increase in our city. We all want the violence to stop. And yes, we need the community to assist with the effort by cooperating with law enforcement. But at the end of the day, quite frankly, we need leadership and a plan to properly address this. So this is so that this violence does not become a normal part of Albany's history. It is also important that we as a council work with our police department, our neighborhood associations, and any other key stakeholder to develop a concrete policy that will make gun violence a thing of the past. And I know that we're working with Gun Violence Task Force, and I hear nothing but positive actions moving forward. But we have to stop this bleeding that is taking place. We have young girls being killed, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. There's no rhyme or reason, but I believe that to stop the violence that we're witnessing in our city, it's upon us to take leadership and let these perpetrators know that this is our city and all of the residents have a right to safe streets. So I urge my colleagues, while this resolution is to bring awareness, that we should continue to think about what's happening to our city. We're building in our city, we're making the city attractive, but with this violence, quite frankly, it's setting us back. And enough is enough. Our families, our children's are dependent on us. And for the public, if you know something, say something. If you know where these guns are, talk to the local law enforcement, talk to elected officials, talk to your neighbors. Enough is enough, and we cannot continue this path. Quite frankly, no matter where you live, you have a right to safe streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nani. We mentioned earlier about the committee looking at Garland's family dedicating a street to them in their name. And this past week, this Saturday, the Garland family buried their matriarch of their family, Miss Garland. And Miss Garland, as we talk about the gun violence in our communities and we talk about what can be done, it starts at home first. It starts with the love of one another, the caring of one another. That's where it starts first. Poverty should never be an excuse to do the wrong thing. And the reason why I say that, because Miss Garland been in my life for over, oh my goodness, I think met Miss Garland was 8 years old. And the first thing I remember about Miss Garland in our community, she was a beautiful woman. She was class, she had dignity, but the first thing you noticed was her love for you. She loved all the kids who came through the wreck, like creating stories on 3rd Avenue. And it was so bad. Her love was so infectious. When we were kids, we didn't know who was her real kids and who was just community people, because she treated us all the same. So when we look at our community and why we didn't veer off to the left or to the right, and we stayed on that straight and narrow path, because we have people like Mrs. Garland, who had the ability to chastise us, who had the ability to teach us, who had the ability to feed us, and knew our mothers and our parents, and had the permission, if we stepped out of line, to keep us in line from our parents, because the community knew Miss Garland loved her kids. And so that matriarch passed this Saturday, was her funeral. And I'm proud to hear that we'll be recognizing the family, but I want to make sure the resolution does recognize Ms. Garland as well, because the barriers she broke down as a woman, as being one of the first women to become a mortuary embalmer, and the struggle she had to fight through to do that, the women's organizations that she started in her neighborhood that led to her city, this is what prevents gun violence. More people continuing and picking up the torch of Miss Garland. And I know hundreds of kids on Creighton Stories, and even after Creighton Stories, all through the city, felt Miss Garland's love and felt they did not want to let her and other community members down. So when we talk about gun violence prevention, it does start in the home, people. It starts by teaching each other to love one another as you should love yourself. That will prevent someone from retaliating with the utmost violence because of a disagreement. We can be disagreeable, but we have to get to the point where you love yourself and your family members, not to put them through that situation, or the other family members that you will be affecting when you do violence on someone because you disagree with them. So we can come up with all the programs we want. We can. We have tons of programs in this city. Tons. Some being used, some not. But until we get people to understand love is the way you get through these things, because we were poor. And I know a lot of council members on this council, you grew up the same way I grew up. But the love was there. And that love keeps you on the straight and narrow. So let's not forget that when we're looking for solutions. Let's look inward. Let's look towards the family situations that are plaguing those neighborhoods, and making sure that everyone has an equal chance to succeed, and justice will prevail with love. And that's all I have to say. Mr. Kimbrough.
Ken, I think you on mute. But second.
Thank you. You read my lips, right? Motion to adjourn, Mr. President.
Mr. 92nd, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.